In a world that mistakes volume for value and noise for influence, the ancient Stoics understood a profound truth. True power doesn't announce itself, it simply is. The most commanding presence in any room is rarely the loudest voice, but rather the person who has mastered the art of strategic silence, thoughtful observation, and deliberate action. Today, we're going to explore how Stoic philosophy can transform you from someone who tries to control through words into someone who commands through presence. We'll discover how the greatest leaders throughout history have used silence as their secret weapon, and how you can develop this same magnetic authority. The Stoics, philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, weren't just theoretical thinkers. They were practical leaders who understood that true influence comes not from what you say, but from who you are. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire not through thunderous speeches, but through quiet wisdom and unshakable character. This isn't about becoming passive or withdrawn. This is about becoming so internally powerful that your very presence shifts the energy of any space you enter. It's about developing such clarity of thought and strength of character that when you do speak, people listen. Not because you've demanded their attention, but because you've earned their respect. Chapter 1. The Stoic Foundation of Quiet Power. Understanding True Control. The first principle we must grasp is what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control. Epictetus, who went from slave to one of history's most influential philosophers, taught that we can only control three things: our thoughts, our actions, and our responses to external events. Everything else, including other people's behavior, opinions, and reactions, lies outside our sphere of influence. This fundamental understanding creates a radical shift in how we approach social situations. Most people exhaust their energy trying to control things they cannot control: what others think, how they respond, whether they like us. The person practicing Stoic quiet power focuses exclusively on what they can control: their own presence, composure, and character. When you walk into a room understanding this principle, you carry yourself differently. You're not anxiously scanning for approval or desperately trying to prove your worth through words. Instead, you're grounded in your own self-possession, and this groundedness is magnetic. People are drawn to those who seem unshakable because, in our chaotic world, stability is rare and valuable. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This realization is the bedrock of quiet authority. When you're not at the mercy of external circumstances, when you're not reactive to every comment or situation, you become like a mountain in a storm, immovable and impressive. The philosophy of strategic silence. Silence in Stoicism isn't about being antisocial or withdrawn. It's about being strategic with your words and energy. The Stoics believed that most people talk too much and think too little. They understood that every word carries weight, and therefore, words should be chosen carefully and used sparingly. Seneca advised, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." This applies to conversations too. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let a conversation end naturally rather than filling every pause with unnecessary words. In these spaces of silence, people often reveal their true thoughts, and you gain valuable insights that would be impossible to obtain if you were constantly talking. Consider how this works in practice. In a business meeting, while others are rushing to share their opinions, you're listening deeply, observing the dynamics, understanding the underlying currents. When you finally speak, your words carry more weight because they're informed by genuine understanding rather than reactive impulse. This doesn't mean being calculating or manipulative. Stoic silence comes from a place of wisdom and respect. Wisdom to know when words will add value, and respect for others' need to express themselves. It's about becoming comfortable with pauses, with letting others fill the space while you maintain your centered presence. Developing internal sovereignty. The Stoics spoke often about ruling oneself before attempting to rule others. This internal sovereignty, complete mastery over your own thoughts, emotions, and reactions, is what creates the foundation for quiet authority. When you're not at war with yourself, when you're not struggling with internal conflicts or emotional reactivity, you project a sense of calm competence that others instinctively respect. This internal work involves several key practices. First, you must develop what the Stoics called prosoke, continuous attention to the present moment. Instead of being lost in thoughts about past failures or future anxieties, you're fully present to what's happening right now. This presence is immediately noticeable to others and creates a sense of authority. Second, you must learn to separate your ego from your actions. The person who needs constant validation, who takes everything personally, who reacts defensively to criticism, cannot command quiet respect. But the person who acts from principle rather than ego, who remains unruffled by personal attacks, who can admit mistakes without losing composure, this person naturally commands attention and respect. Third, you must cultivate what Epictetus called preferred indifference, the understanding that external outcomes, while we may prefer some over others, don't determine our worth or happiness. When you're genuinely indifferent to whether people like you, whether you get credit, whether you win or lose, you paradoxically become much more influential because your actions come from authenticity rather than neediness. Chapter 2. The psychology behind quiet authority. Why silence commands attention. There's a profound psychological principle at work when someone maintains composure while others become agitated, or remains silent while others compete for attention. Humans are evolutionarily wired to pay attention to anomalies, things that stand out from the pattern. In our noisy, chaotic world, the person who remains calm and quiet naturally draws attention. This isn't just about being different for the sake of being different. There's something deeply reassuring about encountering someone who seems unshaken by the storms that agitate everyone else. It suggests depth, wisdom, and strength. People are naturally drawn to those who seem to possess something they lack: inner peace and self-control. The psychological impact of strategic silence also relates to what researchers call the scarcity principle. When something is rare, it becomes more valuable. In a world where everyone is constantly talking, sharing opinions, and demanding attention, the person who speaks less but speaks becomes a scarce and therefore valuable resource. Furthermore, silence creates space for others to project their own thoughts and feelings onto you. This isn't manipulation. It's simply human nature. When someone doesn't immediately reveal all their thoughts and feelings, others become curious. They want to understand what you're thinking, what you know that they don't. This curiosity creates a form of psychological influence that loud, obvious behavior never can. The mirror effect of composure. One of the most powerful aspects of maintaining Stoic composure is what we might call the mirror effect. Your emotional state often becomes contagious, influencing the mood and behavior of those around you. When you remain calm in chaotic situations, others often begin to mirror your calmness. When you maintain dignity in the face of pettiness, others often elevate their own behavior to match your standard. This happens because humans are social creatures who unconsciously adapt to the emotional climate around them. If you enter a tense meeting and remain relaxed and centered, your presence alone can shift the entire atmosphere. People begin to feel that maybe the situation isn't as dire as they thought. Maybe there's a way to handle this with grace and wisdom. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this throughout his reign. Instead of responding to threats and challenges with panic or aggression, he maintained philosophical composure. His calm, thoughtful responses often diffused dangerous situations and inspired confidence in those around him. His Stoic training taught him that his primary job was to control his own reactions, and in doing so, he created space for better outcomes. This mirror effect works in personal relationships too. When someone is trying to provoke you, your refusal to be provoked often causes them to eventually abandon their aggressive approach. When someone is anxious and agitated, your calm presence can help them find their own center. You become a stabilizing force simply by maintaining your own stability. The authority of self-possession. There's an unmistakable authority that comes from genuine self-possession. The quality of being completely comfortable with who you are, what you know, and what you don't know. This isn't arrogance or pretense. It's a quiet confidence that comes from having done the internal work of understanding yourself and accepting responsibility for your own thoughts and actions. People can sense authenticity, just as they can sense when someone is trying too hard or pretending to be something they're not. The person who has achieved Stoic self-possession doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. They don't need to be the smartest person in the room the funniest, or the most charming. They're simply authentically themselves. And this authenticity is magnetic. This self-possession also manifests as what the Stoics called ataraxia, unperturbedness or tranquility of mind. When you're not internally agitated, when you're not fighting battles with yourself, you have tremendous energy available for observing, understanding, and responding appropriately to external situations. Others sense this availability and often turn to you for guidance or leadership. The authority of self-possession is also demonstrated through what you don't do. You don't interrupt others constantly. You don't need to have the last word in every conversation. You don't feel compelled to fill every silence with chatter. These restraints, paradoxically, make your words and actions more powerful when they do come. Chapter 3. Practical Stoic Techniques for Quiet Leadership. The Art of Strategic Listening. The Stoics understood that listening is not a passive activity, but an active discipline that requires strength, focus, and wisdom. Strategic listening goes beyond simply hearing words. It involves understanding contexts, reading between the lines, and grasping the emotional undercurrents of communication. When you truly listen, you accomplish several things simultaneously. First, you gather information that others miss because they're too busy preparing their own responses. Second, you demonstrate respect for the speaker, which builds goodwill and trust. Third, you often discover that what people really need is not advice or solutions, but simply to be heard and understood. The practice of strategic listening also involves listening to what is not said. People often communicate as much through their silences, their hesitations, and their body language as they do through their words. The Stoic practitioner learns to read these subtle signals and respond to the complete communication, not just the verbal component. To develop this skill, practice what Epictetus called attention, being fully present to what's happening right now rather than being lost in your own thoughts. When someone is speaking to you, resist the urge to formulate your response while they're still talking. Instead, focus completely on understanding their perspective, their emotions, and their underlying needs. This doesn't mean being passive or never contributing to conversations. Rather, it means that when you do speak, your words are informed by deep understanding rather than reactive impulse. Your responses address what people actually need to hear rather than what you feel compelled to say. Mastering the pause. One of the most powerful tools in the arsenal of quiet authority is the strategic pause. This isn't about dramatic effect or manipulation. It's about creating space for wisdom to emerge rather than allowing reactive impulse to dominate your responses. The Stoics practiced what they called the discipline of desire, the ability to pause between stimulus and response, to consider rather than react. In conversations, this translates to taking a moment to consider your words before speaking, especially in emotionally charged situations. This pause serves several functions. It allows you to respond from your highest self rather than from emotional reactivity. It demonstrates thoughtfulness and consideration, which others interpret as wisdom and maturity. It also creates space for others to continue speaking, often revealing information or insights that wouldn't emerge if you responded immediately. Practically, this might mean counting to 3 before responding to a provocative comment, or taking a deep breath before answering a difficult question. It might mean saying, "That's an interesting point. Let me think about that for a moment," rather than rushing to defend your position or prove your knowledge. The pause also applies to decision-making. While others might feel pressured to make quick decisions or give immediate answers, the Stoic practitioner is comfortable saying, "I need to consider this carefully before responding." This approach often leads to better decisions and commands more respect than hasty, ill-considered responses. The power of principled action. When you do act or speak, Stoic philosophy demands that your words and actions be grounded in principle rather than emotion, ego, or social pressure. This principled approach to action is what gives quiet authority its power. People sense that your words and actions come from a deep, consistent place rather than from momentary impulse or social positioning. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, fortitude, courage, and temperance, self-discipline. Every action and word should be filtered through these principles. Is what you're about to say or do wise? Is it just? Does it require courage? Does it demonstrate self-discipline? When your actions consistently reflect these principles, You develop a reputation for integrity that commands natural respect. This principled approach also means being willing to stand alone when necessary. If everyone else in the room is engaging in gossip, complaining, or unethical behavior, the Stoic practitioner maintains their principles even if it means being temporarily unpopular. This consistency builds trust over time. People know that you can be counted on to act according to your values regardless of social pressure. Principled action also involves what the Stoics called sympathia, the understanding that we're all interconnected and that our actions affect others. This means considering the broader impact of your words and actions, not just the immediate personal benefit. When people sense that you're acting from consideration for the greater good rather than pure self-interest, they're more likely to respect and follow your lead. Managing energy and attention. The Stoics understood that energy and attention are finite resources that must be managed wisely. Most people scatter their energy across dozens of concerns, opinions, and reactions throughout the day. The Stoic practitioner learns to conserve energy by focusing only on what truly matters and letting go of things outside their control. This energy management directly impacts your ability to maintain quiet authority. When you're not exhausted by reacting to every small irritation or engaging in every trivial conversation, you have energy available for the moments that truly matter. When you do engage, you can bring your full presence and wisdom to the situation. Attention management is equally important. In our distracted age, the ability to give someone your complete, undivided attention is increasingly rare and valuable. When you're fully present with others, not checking your phone, not thinking about other tasks, not planning your next response, people notice and appreciate this quality of attention. The Stoics also practiced what we might call emotional energy management. Instead of allowing yourself to be drained by other people's dramas, complaints, or emotional chaos, you maintain your own emotional equilibrium. This doesn't mean being cold or uncaring, but rather maintaining your center while being compassionate and helpful to others. Chapter 4. Reading the Room, Stoic Observation Skills. Developing philosophical awareness. The Stoics emphasized the importance of understanding human nature and social dynamics. Marcus Aurelius spent considerable time in his meditations analyzing human behavior, not to judge others, but to understand them better and respond more effectively. This kind of philosophical awareness is crucial for anyone seeking to develop quiet authority. Philosophical awareness involves understanding that most people are driven by emotions, ego, and unconscious patterns rather than reason and principle. This isn't a cynical observation, but a compassionate one. It allows you to respond to people's real motivations and needs rather than just their surface words and actions. When you enter a room, instead of immediately focusing on what you want to say or accomplish, spend time observing the dynamics already in play. Who holds real influence versus who holds official authority? What are the underlying tensions or alliances? What emotional currents are flowing beneath the surface conversation? This awareness allows you to position yourself strategically within the social ecosystem. You can identify natural allies, potential sources of resistance, and opportunities to add value. You can also recognize when the timing is right for your contribution versus when it's better to continue observing. The Stoic approach to social observation is always constructive rather than manipulative. You're not looking for ways to exploit others' weaknesses, but rather seeking to understand how you can contribute most effectively to positive outcomes for everyone involved. Understanding unspoken communication. Much of human communication happens below the level of words. Body language, tone of voice, energy levels, and what people don't say often communicate more than their actual words. The Stoic practitioner learns to read these subtle signals while maintaining their own composed presence. This skill is particularly valuable in tense or complex situations. While others might be focused on the verbal argument, you're noting the underlying emotional dynamics. Who is feeling threatened? Who is trying to save face? Who has information they're not sharing? Who is looking for a way out of the conflict? Understanding unspoken communication also involves recognizing your own nonverbal signals. The Stoics emphasize self-awareness as a foundation for all other skills. How do you carry yourself? What does your posture communicate? How does your energy affect the room? Are you projecting the calm confidence you intend? Or are you unconsciously communicating anxiety or aggression? The goal is alignment between your internal state and your external presence. When you've achieved Stoic equanimity internally, it naturally expresses itself through relaxed but alert posture, steady eye contact, and calm, measured speech. This alignment is what others read as authentic authority. Timing and social rhythms. Every social situation has its own rhythm and timing. Conversations have natural flows. Meetings have energy peaks and valleys. And groups go through predictable cycles of tension and resolution. The Stoic practitioner learns to read these rhythms and time their contributions accordingly. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to speak when everyone expects silence, or remain silent when everyone expects you to speak. This isn't about being contrarian for its own sake, but about understanding when your contribution will have maximum positive impact. The Stoics understood that there are seasons for different types of action. Sometimes it's a season for building consensus quietly behind the scenes. Sometimes it's a season for taking a clear stand on principle. Sometimes it's a season for stepping back and allowing others to lead. Wisdom lies in recognizing which season you're in and acting accordingly. This timing sense also applies to emotional rhythms. People go through cycles of being open to influence and being resistant to it. When someone is highly emotional or defensive, it's rarely the right time to try to change their mind. But when they're calm and reflective, they may be open to perspectives they would reject at other times. Creating psychological safety. One of the most powerful ways to control a room quietly is to create an atmosphere where others feel psychologically safe to express their authentic thoughts and feelings. When people feel safe around you, they're more likely to be honest, creative, and collaborative. Psychological safety doesn't mean agreeing with everything everyone says or avoiding all conflict. Rather, it means creating an environment where people know they won't be attacked, humiliated, or dismissed for expressing their genuine perspectives. This requires maintaining your own emotional equilibrium even when dealing with difficult personalities or challenging topics. The Stoics understood that most human conflict arises from fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of losing face, fear of being rejected or attacked. When you consistently demonstrate that you won't attack others for their vulnerability or honesty, you create space for more authentic and productive interactions. This safety is created not through words but through consistent behavior over time. People learn to trust you because you've proven that you can handle their mistakes, disagreements, and weaknesses with dignity and respect. This trust is the foundation of true influence. Chapter 5. The Stoic Response System. From reaction to response. The fundamental difference between those who command quiet respect and those who don't lies in their ability to respond rather than react. A reaction is immediate, emotional, and often regrettable. A response is thoughtful, principled, and strategic. The Stoics developed specific practices to create space between stimulus and response. The first step is developing what Epictetus called the initial impression awareness, recognizing the moment when something triggers an emotional response in you. Maybe someone makes a comment that feels like criticism, or a situation develops that threatens your plans. The untrained person immediately reacts from emotion. The Stoic practitioner notices the trigger and pauses. In that pause, you have the opportunity to choose your response based on your principles and long-term goals rather than immediate emotional impulse. You might ask yourself, what would the wisest person I know do in this situation? Or how can I respond in a way that reflects my values and moves things in a positive direction? This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending to be unaffected by challenging situations. It means acknowledging your emotional response while choosing your actions based on reason and principle. You might feel angry at an unfair criticism, but you can choose to respond with curiosity rather than defensiveness. That's an interesting perspective. Help me understand your thinking on that. The Stoic response system also involves what Marcus Aurelius called the view from above, stepping back mentally and seeing the situation from a broader perspective. Will this matter in 5 years? Is this worth damaging a relationship over? What's the most constructive way forward for everyone involved? The discipline of assent. One of the most practical Stoic concepts for maintaining quiet authority is the discipline of assent, the practice of carefully examining your thoughts and judgments before accepting them as true. Most people unconsciously accept whatever thoughts pop into their minds. But the Stoic practitioner learns to examine thoughts critically. When someone makes a comment that triggers you, your mind might immediately generate thoughts like he's trying to make me look bad, or she doesn't respect me, or this is a disaster. The discipline of assent involves questioning these automatic interpretations. Are these thoughts accurate? Are there other possible explanations? What evidence do I have for these judgments? This practice is crucial for maintaining composure in challenging situations. Often, what upsets us isn't the actual situation, but our interpretation of the situation. When you learn to question your initial interpretations and consider alternatives, you often find that situations are less threatening or personal than they first appeared. The discipline of assent also applies to positive situations. When someone praises you or when things go well, the Stoic practitioner doesn't immediately assume credit or become attached to the outcome. Instead, they recognize that many factors beyond their control contributed to the success, and they remain grounded in their principles rather than becoming inflated by praise. This balanced approach to both positive and negative events creates a steady, reliable presence that others find reassuring and trustworthy. You're not elated by praise or devastated by criticism, which allows you to maintain clear judgment and consistent character regardless of circumstances. Strategic emotional regulation. Contrary to popular misconceptions, Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or becoming cold and unfeeling. Rather, it's about understanding emotions as information and choosing how to respond to that information. The Stoic practitioner learns to feel emotions fully while not being controlled by them. When you feel anger arising, instead of either suppressing it or expressing it immediately, you can use it as information. What is this anger telling you about the situation? Is there an injustice that needs to be addressed? Is someone crossing an important boundary? Is your ego being threatened in a way that reveals an area for growth? The same applies to fear, sadness, excitement, or any other emotion. Emotions provide valuable information about your values, needs, and perceptions. The key is to receive this information without being hijacked by it. You can feel afraid while still acting courageously. You can feel sad while still supporting others. You can feel excited while still making thoughtful decisions. This emotional regulation creates tremendous presence and authority. When others are overwhelmed by their emotions, you remain centered and capable of clear thinking. This doesn't mean you're unfeeling. Often, your emotional intelligence and empathy are actually heightened because you're not lost in your own emotional reactivity. The art of reframing. The Stoics were masters of cognitive reframing, the ability to see challenging situations from multiple perspectives and choose the interpretation that serves the highest good. This skill is essential for maintaining quiet authority because it prevents you from being thrown off balance by unexpected developments. When faced with what initially appears to be a setback, failure, or attack, the Stoic practitioner asks, how might this serve my growth or the greater good? This isn't about denying reality or pretending everything is fine. About looking for the opportunities and lessons that exist within every challenging situation. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. When faced with rebellions, natural disasters, and personal tragedies, he would remind himself that these challenges were opportunities to practice virtue, to develop character, and to serve others more effectively. This reframing allowed him to maintain composure and effectiveness even in extremely difficult circumstances. In social situations, reframing is equally powerful. When someone seems to be attacking you, you might reframe it as, this person is struggling with something and needs compassion, or this is an opportunity for me to practice patience and understanding. When plans fall through, you might reframe it as, this creates space for something better to emerge, or this is a chance to practice adaptability. The key is to find reframes that are both truthful and empowering. You're not lying to yourself or denying reality, but you're choosing to focus on the aspects of the situation that allow you to respond constructively rather than destructively. Chapter 6. Advanced Stoic Leadership Techniques. Leading through example. The most powerful form of leadership doesn't announce itself. It simply demonstrates what's possible. The Stoic leader influences others not through commands or charismatic speeches, but by consistently embodying the principles and qualities they hope to see in others. This approach is subtle but incredibly effective because it bypasses resistance and appeals directly to people's higher aspirations. When you consistently demonstrate calm in chaos, integrity under pressure, and wisdom in decision-making, you create a template that others naturally want to follow. People are inspired by what they see rather than what they're told, and they're more likely to adopt behaviors they witness than behaviors they're instructed to perform. This form of leadership requires tremendous consistency because people are always watching, often unconsciously. Your response to small irritations is as important as your response to major crises because both reveal your character. The person seeking quiet authority must be willing to live their principles even when no one is watching, because authenticity cannot be faked consistently. Leading by example also means being willing to do what you ask others to do. If you want others to be more thoughtful in their communication, you must model thoughtful communication. If you want others to remain calm under pressure, you must demonstrate calm under pressure. This alignment between what you espouse and what you embody is what creates credible authority. The power of principled disagreement. One of the most advanced skills in quiet leadership is the ability to disagree with others while maintaining respect and goodwill. Most people either avoid conflict entirely or engage in it destructively. The Stoic practitioner learns to disagree from principle rather than ego, and to do so in a way that often strengthens rather than damages relationships. Principled disagreement begins with examining your own motivations. Are you disagreeing because you genuinely believe a different approach would be better for everyone involved? Or are you disagreeing because your ego is threatened because you want to appear smart, or because you dislike the person making the proposal? When your disagreement comes from genuine principle and care for the outcome, it can be expressed with respect and curiosity rather than attack and defensiveness. Instead of saying that's wrong or that won't work, you might say, I have some concerns about that approach. May I share my perspective? Or I see things differently. Would it be helpful if I explain my reasoning? This approach often leads to better outcomes because it creates dialogue rather than debate. The goal isn't to win or to make others wrong, but to find the best solution by bringing different perspectives together. When people sense that your disagreement comes from care rather than ego, they're much more likely to listen and engage constructively. Strategic vulnerability. While Stoicism emphasizes strength and self-control, advanced practitioners understand that strategic vulnerability can actually enhance rather than diminish their authority. This isn't about emotional dumping or constant self-revelation, but about being appropriately human and relatable while maintaining your core strength. Strategic vulnerability might mean admitting when you don't know something rather than pretending to have all the answers. It might mean acknowledging a mistake you made and what you learned from it. It might mean sharing a personal struggle in a way that helps others feel less alone with their own struggles. The key is that this vulnerability comes from a place of strength rather than neediness. You're not sharing to get sympathy or to make others responsible for your emotions. You're sharing because it serves a larger purpose. It builds trust, creates connection, or provides valuable learning for others. This approach is particularly powerful because it's unexpected. In a world where many people are trying to appear perfect or invulnerable, authentic humanity stands out. People are drawn to leaders who seem both strong and real, competent and relatable. Creating win-win outcomes. The highest form of quiet authority lies in consistently creating situations where everyone benefits. This requires moving beyond zero-sum thinking, the assumption that for you to win, others must lose, and developing the wisdom to find solutions that serve multiple interests simultaneously. This skill requires deep listening, creative thinking, and genuine care for others' needs and interests. It also requires what the Stoics called sympathia, the understanding that we're all interconnected and that our well-being is ultimately linked to others' well-being. In practical terms, this might mean looking for the underlying interests behind people's stated positions. Someone who seems to be opposing your proposal might actually be worried about something that could be addressed without abandoning your core objectives. Someone who appears to be competing with you might actually be seeking recognition or security that could be provided in ways that don't threaten your own goals. The ability to consistently find these win-win solutions builds enormous trust and respect over time. People begin to see you as someone who makes their lives better rather than someone they need to compete with or defend against. This reputation becomes a powerful source of influence because people actively seek your involvement in important decisions and challenging situations. Advanced applications in different contexts. Stoic leadership in professional settings. The modern workplace presents unique challenges for implementing Stoic principles, but it also offers tremendous opportunities for quiet leadership. In professional settings, your ability to remain composed under pressure, make thoughtful decisions, and maintain integrity often determines your advancement more than technical skills alone. In meetings, practice strategic participation rather than feeling compelled to contribute to every discussion. Listen carefully to understand the underlying issues and dynamics before speaking. When you do contribute, make sure your words add genuine value rather than simply announcing your presence. Ask thoughtful questions that help others clarify their thinking. When dealing with difficult colleagues or supervisors, remember that you can only control your own behavior and responses. Focus on doing excellent work, maintaining professional relationships, and upholding your standards regardless of others' behavior. Your consistency and reliability will be noticed and valued over time. In leadership positions, model the behavior you want to see rather than simply mandating it. If you want your team to communicate more openly, be transparent in your own communication. If you want them to take initiative, demonstrate initiative yourself. If you want them to handle pressure calmly, show them what calm under pressure looks like. When facing organizational politics, maintain your integrity while learning to navigate the system effectively. You don't have to participate in gossip or manipulation, but you do need to understand how decisions are really made and relationships really work in your organization. Use this understanding to advance worthy goals rather than personal agenda. Stoic principles in personal relationships. Applying Stoic principles to personal relationships requires balancing philosophical discipline with emotional authenticity. The goal isn't to become cold or detached, but to love more wisely and respond more skillfully to the inevitable challenges that arise in close relationships. In romantic relationships, Stoicism helps you maintain your individual identity and growth while building genuine partnership. You support your partner's development without trying to control or change them. Focus on being reliably yourself rather than trying to create dramatic impressions. The person who handles small irritations with grace is more impressive over time than the person who gives occasional inspiring speeches, but loses their temper over minor inconveniences. Understand that building a reputation for quiet authority means that people will begin to expect higher standards from you. This isn't unfair. It's the natural result of demonstrating that you're capable of those standards. Embrace this expectation as motivation for continued growth rather than resenting it as pressure. Accept that some people may interpret your composure as coldness or your principles as rigidity. You cannot control others' perceptions, and trying to do so undermines the very authority you're seeking to build. Focus on being authentic to your values rather than managing others' opinions. Remember that reputation is built through consistency in small moments rather than dramatic gestures. The way you respond to everyday challenges, treat service workers, handle minor disappointments, and interact with people who can't benefit you. These moments shape how others see your character. Mentoring and teaching others. As you develop your own Stoic practice and quiet authority, you'll naturally find opportunities to help others develop similar qualities. This mentoring role is both a responsibility and an opportunity for your own continued growth. Teach primarily through example rather than lectures. People learn more from observing how you handle difficult situations than from hearing your explanations of Stoic principles. Your consistent behavior over time is more persuasive than any argument. When people ask for advice or guidance, help them discover their own wisdom rather than simply telling them what to do. Ask questions that help them clarify their values, examine their assumptions, and consider different perspectives. This approach helps them develop internal strength rather than dependence on external direction. Share your own struggles and learning experiences rather than presenting yourself as someone who has mastered these practices. People connect more with authentic humanity than with seeming perfection. Your willingness to admit mistakes and ongoing challenges makes your success more relatable and achievable. Be selective about when and how you share Stoic concepts. Not everyone is ready for a philosophical discussion, and pushing these ideas on unreceptive audiences often backfires. Look for natural opportunities to plant seeds of wisdom rather than forcing conversations about philosophy. Legacy and long-term impact. The highest expression of quiet authority is the positive impact you have on others throughout your life. This impact often extends far beyond your immediate awareness, as people carry forward lessons they learn from observing your character and apply them in their own lives and relationships. Think about the kind of person you want to be remembered as. What qualities do you want people to associate with your name? How do you have influenced the lives you've touched? Let these reflections guide your daily choices and long-term development. Consider how your developing authority can serve causes and communities you care about. As you gain influence and respect, you have increasing opportunities to support worthy projects, mentor emerging leaders, and contribute to positive change in your sphere of influence. Document your learning and insights, whether through journaling, writing, or other forms of creative expression. Your experiences and wisdom may benefit others long after you're gone. Many of the Stoic texts we study today were personal reflections that their authors never intended to publish. Remember that your most important legacy may be the people you influence to develop their own character and quiet authority. If your example inspires others to live more thoughtfully, respond more skillfully, and serve more generously, your impact multiplies far beyond what you could accomplish alone. Conclusion: the paradox of quiet power. As we reach the end of our exploration, it's important to recognize the beautiful paradox at the heart of Stoic quiet authority. The less you need to control others, the more influence you naturally gain. The less desperate you are for recognition, the more people notice and respect you. The more comfortable you become with silence, the more weight your words carry when you do speak. This paradox reveals a profound truth about human nature and social dynamics. People are naturally drawn to those who seem complete in themselves, who don't need constant validation or attention, who can be trusted to act from principle rather than self-interest. In our noisy, attention-seeking world, such individuals stand out like beacons of authenticity and wisdom. The journey of developing quiet authority through Stoic principles is ultimately a journey toward becoming your highest self. It's about aligning your external presence with your internal values, about developing the strength to remain centered regardless of circumstances, and about serving others through the power of your example rather than the force of your words. This development is never complete. Even Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful leaders, spent his final years writing personal reflections on how he could better embody Stoic principles. The path of wisdom is lifelong, and the practice of quiet authority is something you must recommit to daily. But the rewards of this practice extend far beyond personal satisfaction or social influence. When you develop the ability to remain calm in chaos, to act from principle under pressure, and to influence others through character rather than manipulation, you contribute to the healing of our fractured world. You become part of the solution to the epidemic of anxiety, reactivity, and superficiality that characterizes so much of modern life. Your quiet authority becomes a gift to everyone who encounters it, a reminder that it's possible to live differently, to respond rather than react, to lead through service rather than domination. In a world that often feels out of control, you become a demonstration that self-control is possible, that wisdom can prevail over folly, and that true strength is quiet, steady, and unshakable. The ancient Stoics understood that philosophy is not mere academic exercise, but a way of life that transforms both the individual and their community. As you continue to develop these practices, remember that you're participating in a tradition that spans centuries, joining countless others who have chosen the path of wisdom over the path of least resistance. May your journey toward quiet authority serve not only your own growth and happiness, but the flourishing of all those whose lives you touch. In mastering yourself, you gain the only kind of power that truly matters, the power to make a positive difference in the world through the strength of your character and the wisdom of your example. The room awaits your quiet presence. The world needs your grounded wisdom. Step forward with confidence. Speak when words will serve. Remain silent when silence will teach. And trust that your authentic commitment to virtue will create the influence and impact you seek. This is the way of the Stoic, This is the path of quiet authority. This is how you control the room without saying a word.